I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to.
Can I speak now since you're not going to argue?
I'm not done.
But you're making a long-winded narrative.
Okay, well, that's too bad. I am Themis's guest. I'm not on your channel. I'm on his channel. And when he tells me to be quiet, I will. Is that okay for you? It's more about cooperation, and quality men, they understand what an intelligent, educated woman can bring to them in terms of credibility, in terms of clout, and what they can do in their business. They find value in that. And the men who don't find value in that, really, you should be suspicious. You should be suspicious of a man who doesn't find value in that.
Someone left a comment on a video that I just did concerning, well, whatever, talking about how education, the people were talking about education doesn't matter. And she was talking about in India, in certain areas, there were women who went to school to become doctors for degrees only, to go be housewives to raise children who are highly educated. And it's unfortunate.
Yes, but you understand why they're doing that, though. It's because these men value, like, they're thinking about legacy. They want intelligent women raising their children. Like men my sister-in-law has a degree from Dartmouth and Harvard Law School. And you know what she does? She's a housewife, but she's also been involved in city government. She's part of the junior league, the women's league, all of that. You don't think that helped him with his business? She knew how to entertain. She knew people, the movers and shakers of their town. Like, that helped his business. And he valued that. And not only that, they have cultivated excellent children who have gone on to Ivy League schools. Like, this is how it's done. I just feel like we're so short-sighted as a people. We're so into appearances more than legacy. We just get caught up in like how things look than, what the greater thing is. And, men of the men who I know of other races celebrate an intelligent woman. They want smart women because they want their kids to be smart, even if the woman stays home. And then also part of a housewife, you join moms organizations, like you're competing with like to raise excellent children, and you can't be a dummy and raise you can. I'm just saying you can't, but it's harder, right? Because you have to learn the stuff too. But like, I wish that the men would focus more on wanting smart, bright, brilliant women who are educated, because they want their children to have an excellent mother who's giving them the best opportunity for their legacy to propagate in a beneficial way. Like can't we move outside of the male ego? And can't you want better for your kids? Don't you want a smart wife?
So that's when people bring up like, oh, the Black community and this and that. For me, it's like, you're talking about the Black community now, but if you are telling women that they shouldn't get educated, if you're telling them that they should not be making money and they should be dependent on you, and you're not doing anything, I don't think that is, like, the two things, they don't add up to me. Like, the math is not mathing there, right? How do you care about the community if you're telling people to step back in an effort to boost your own ego? Like, that literally makes no sense to me.
So funny. I feel like I'm on StreamYard, and I can't even tell you how many times my finger's been itching to clap the mic. Because I'm like, this ain't Clubhouse. Well, no, you're exactly right, though, Themis.
You can please stay on with me. You invited me to yours, and I'm always ready. Please stay on, and we'll bring people up, and they can ask us questions. If you have to leave, obviously.
Sure, I can stay on for a few more minutes.
All right, awesome.
So there was somebody in the comment section who said the Africans weren't giving away their own people. They were giving away the losers and the POWs. And it's like, but these are people who, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's more.
That's what happened.
That's not necessarily what happened.
Okay. All right, so let me tell you what the Slavics did. You guys understand where the word slave comes from?
Slavic.
This is, I think it's very interesting. We are making like a
Can I finish?
white supremacist argument.
Continue.
Can I finish, please? So do you understand where the word slave came from? It came from, and just for the benefit of the audience, it came from Slavics. It came from the Slavs were the first slaves that were part of the the slave trade as we know it on the Western Front. People, the slavers literally stormed the beaches and took them. They took them. Okay. And you know what they did? They got tired of their people being taken, whether they were peasants, whether they were part of the family or not, whether they were part of, like, they fought back. They said, not on our soil are you going to take any person. They said, not on our soil will we allow for that to happen. That's not white supremacist. That is not a white supremacist narrative. It's from the book Stamped from the Beginning, written by a Black man, who talked about the rendition of how this happened and how it originated. And that's how I learned. I learned from a Black man talking about what the Slavs did, and they thought that the slavers were like, you know what, this is too much trouble. These Slavs, they too much trouble. And so they negotiated with people who were willing to give up people who looked like them, whether they were part of the tribe or not, look like them, in exchange for whiskey, cowrie shells, guns, handkerchiefs, whatever. And so the value of their people was not the same value that the Slavs put it, because nobody was saying, oh, well, they're just peasants. They're not one of us. They didn't do that. That's not white supremacist thinking. That's just your narrative. So because you want me to shut up. Like, that's basically what it is. You want me to shut up and be quiet. And so you're going to throw and say that I'm being a white supremacist when I actually learned this from a Black man from a very prominent book called Stamped from the Beginning.
Well, first of all, the Slavs were taken by Muslim slave traders. And I mean, I guess I get your point that the Slavs didn't sell each other out.
So,
but you understand.
Does it matter who? Like
you're saying it matters who. You're saying
no, what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is that when they started to be taken, regardless of the ethnicity of the Caucasian that came to the shores to take them, they said no. They fought back, regardless of. Does it matter? Does it matter that they were Arab or they were white? How does that matter? They said, regardless of who taking whom and where they come from, they said no, and we didn't. That's the point. They said no, and we didn't.
My historical reference here is very limited, but to the extent that we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, BBC, I watched this a while ago. A professor of mine played it. And one of the things that I was not taught, and understandably, is the involvement of different leaders in different tribes selling Black people during this time. Now, I didn't know this. I watched it on the BBC and obviously whatever, but I did find it concerning. Obviously, there was a couple of things going on. There were Europeans coming in and capturing Black people. And there was a percentage, a small percent, but nonetheless, they existed, of leaders who sold prisoners and other people, Black people, into slavery. Economies were built on this. So I found that really disturbing, but I don't know how to I didn't know how to make the video, so I didn't. This is one of the first times I decided not to make a video because I didn't actually know what to do with it. So Mr. Jerin first, because I was responding to something you said.
I'm not gonna debate the history because it's just absurd. Like you're essentially undermining the entire story of slavery in America. Do you understand?
No.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. If slavery.
No, you're not undermining the narrative that Black people were innocent, that Africans were innocent in this. I'm undermining that because that was not true.
So you're undermining the entire story of the European slave trade and placing the blame on Africans.
No. So you guys can do that. Let me just clarify my position, because I don't mind disagreeing with everyone. My position is that there is a very particular argument when it comes to who was involved. And a lot of people point to the selling out of their own people, right? The conversation is happening where people are talking about how Black leaders sold out their own people, right? I am not blaming them necessarily for the entirety of of slavery, right, as we understood it through the transatlantic slave trade. This, by the way, is why I never did the video, because it was very difficult to kind of parse through, because I think that the message would be, oh, you think Black people are supposed to be blamed for their own enslavement. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that as a historical fact, to the extent we can trust the BBC, there were in fact leaders in the Black community, African leaders who did in fact sold slave. Now these people into slavery were criminals, some were, and they were captives of war. That is to the extent the BBC is correct, that is a historical fact. Yeah, go ahead, Crystalline, and then Mr. Whitty, and then Jerin.
So this, this is African Passages Low Country Adaptations. With some exceptions, Europeans. This is with some early exceptions. Europeans were not able to independently enter the West and Central African interior to capture Africans and force them onto ships to the Americas. Instead, European traders generally relied on a network of African rulers and traders to capture and bring enslaved Africans from various coastal and interior regions to slave castles on the West and Central African coast. Many of these traders acquired captives as a result of military and political conflict, but some also pursued slave trading for profit. Why is it so painful to acknowledge that some African men who had some clout were looking to come up off of this thing too? Like, why is it so hard to believe that there were not industrious Africans who had questionable moral compasses that were willing to do this for profit? Like,
nobody disagrees with you. It's like,
why then, like, if I'm bringing it up, I want to know though, why is it a white supremacist talking point by saying it? I really want you to answer that question.
Very simple, because then the next it's therefore what? Therefore,
wait, before you go, Mr. Whitty is supposed to go then, Jaren. Sorry.
Yeah, to Jan's point, therefore what? I think that's a very interesting point. If you hadn't learned that in school, I had learned that from a very long time ago, that there were Africans that were involved in the slave trade. If you're Jamaican, you know that you can go to Ghana, and my sister, who studied abroad in Ghana at NYU, went to all of the chambers where you can see where there were places, yes, that there were times that Africans would exchange slaves with strip people who came in on the ports. However, the history of slavery, going back to, speaking of Slavics, etc., and the root of the word, there have been slaves. People have sold their own people into slavery all around the world for the entirety of time. Like, Egypt built its pyramids with its own slaves. So the fact that there are people who made money off of slaves, I don't understand how that relates to Black men and their behaviors of selling out things. Like, that jump is so, like, intellectually, I don't know. Like, I don't even know where to go. But like, I think
there are people who have deep distrust for Black leadership because of the ways they have kind of thought about history. And people talk about this a lot, about the Black man's willingness to sell out the Black woman in order to get ahead.
And that was the parallel that I was bringing into.
I didn't talk for very long at all. Like, I didn't talk for very long at all. I just want to make a little point, like, to fully tie this up. I think, like, the reason why that's a white supremacist talking point is the idea of blaming Black men for their own enslavement, because essentially they were so greedy that they would sell their own selves out. And so essentially they are responsible for their own enslavement for 300 years. I suppose it's just like Kanye West saying that Black people, wanted to be slaves because they didn't fight hard enough to get out of it. Like, I can't find the separation between those kind of ideas. However, I fundamentally believe that slavery was obviously not Black people's fault. And I think that the role of Black men and the role of Black women in slavery as a connected unit cannot be divorced. We both experience everything together. And I think that because of these gender wars, as a person who's not invested in these gender wars, it's like arms race. It's like everyone is looking for something to be like.
But can you stop? I'm going to mute you. No, it's not that. There is a buzzing sound that I don't know where it's coming from. Is it? No.
I mean, it's like, does it take away from the brutality of what the Europeans and American slave trades did? Does it take away from by saying that some Africans were just greedy and that used it as an opportunity to get something? Like, can we walk and chew gum? Can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Like, can we say that the transatlantic slave trade was especially brutal and disgusting and horrible, and also say that there were some greedy, and let's just face it, it was the men who were having these transactions with other men? Like, can't those two things exist? I mean, like, I don't understand why those two things cannot exist.
I think that the point that there have been men who have controlled the world, who are prominent in their societies in every country around the world before the slave trade who sold their people into slavery. For instance, a large majority of there's a large population of Asian and Indian slaves that were sent to the West Indies. The British sent specifically just for the reason of knowing that white people can't take heat. They sent white people to Australia so they could burn and blister in the sun. But they didn't end up in 300 years of slavery. So like there's very specific things related to Black people and slavery in the trade. And the fact that like you can find a couple kings who had dominion over people in Africa. I mean, you know, I don't understand how those points have any reason to relate to one another.
But here's the thing. There's still slavery that is occurring in Africa today that has nothing to do with the transatlantic slave trade. It is still happening.
And so what? What's your point?
So okay, wait. So let me understand.
There's no connection. We're not in Africa.
Jaron, let me understand this. So slavery is important if we're talking about the historical scars of it and how white Europeans damaged. But now slavery doesn't matter because it's not part of white European. It's not part of the white European agenda. It's from another ethnicity, so it doesn't matter now because it's a different type of man who's doing it. Like,
I would say that.
Wow. Okay.
Slavery.
Thank you. Audience, you got that. Audience, did you hear that?
Are you aware that there are slaves in the United States?
Yeah, I heard it loud and clear.
Are you aware that there's slavery in the United States currently? If you go into the garment industry, which I work in very specifically, there are slaves in like many countries.
And you know what?
So
it's illegal. It's illegal when it's found. It's illegal, and when those people are found, I read the stories, and when those people are found, they are jailed. They're put under the jail. So yeah, it's still going on. But when they're found, no, it's not. I mean, they're slavery.
What happens to them when they find them in Africa?
So I will find you. I will find you the articles of slavery that is still happening freely. That is going on freely in the country right now. And one person on the panel said, basically, it doesn't matter because it's not white men anymore. It's Asian people. What does that have to do with us? Okay. Everybody heard it. Everybody heard it.
In the modern world today.
When it comes to, we're going to move back from this conversation because one of the things that I wanted to highlight, right, was that when Jaron said we were brushing over the slavery conversation when Annalisa brought it up, I intentionally let that go. And I did because I knew this would happen. And the arguments aren't like, I would not agree with anyone who says the Black man is responsible for slavery. That's not a position I will take. But to ignore the fact that there were some, maybe two leaders, three, that did engage in selling their brothers and sisters, I find that abhorrent. I'm not going to just pretend like I don't. And yes, if you think it's a white supremacist talking point, sure, that is fine. I still think it's disgusting. And I can have that and think slavery was bad, and that white people perpetuated harm during that time. So
congratulations, Themis. You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
I think, but to get back to what we were talking about earlier, I think the juxtaposition was interesting, that the faults of Black men, we can list a million. We can even blame slavery on Black men. But
no,
when Woody was talking about, they were talking about single motherhood, we couldn't even like touch it. It was off limits. We couldn't even really explore what was going on. Or if we did, if it was hinted that maybe Black women have a role to play, it was kind of explained ways. There are other reasons and there are other players and it's not their fault. But the juxtaposition is interesting. We've just seen with this conversation over slavery that, of course, there are other factors going on in the international or transatlantic slave trade, and that Black or African sold other people, blah blah blah. There are all sorts of other factors going on. But it was so easy to just say, well, that's Black men. That was Black men doing that, regardless of all the other players going on. I think that's sort of the interesting juxtaposition here, that we can so easily, blame even slavery, chattel slavery for 300 years on Black people, but we can't explore maybe what's going on with single mothers. Do they have a role? It's like, so certainly others see this, right?
I'm not saying you're wrong in this, Jaron. I'm not, but I'm going to point out that I don't believe anyone was blaming Black. Well, maybe Annalisa will speak for herself, but I don't blame Black men for slavery, and I'm pretty sure Crystalline does not blame.
Yeah,
Black men.
I'm not. By simply saying that there was complicity does not mean that that it is the original. Like, I mean, I think it's such an emotional, and I get it. It's a very emotional conversation to have, but by saying there was complicity doesn't mean that I'm saying there is sole responsibility. So it's like, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't quit. If there's a complicity, it doesn't mean that it's a sole responsibility. Okay, can we just like the tagline? Complicity don't mean sole responsibility. Okay,
I agree with that. I think that but I don't think anyone was saying necessarily that black men are at fault for slavery of Africans. However, I would also like to posit just for further context that, and this goes to my point about what sort of message are we sending with the rhetoric? What sort of characterization are we sending with our rhetoric? Because if we're going to broach the fact that there was black African nobles and whatnot who participated in the selling of Africans into slavery, we also have to acknowledge the fact that there was also plenty of African men and women who fought back against enslavement of Africans. Not only in the context of those who were finally brought over to the West, but even at the continent, there was people who tried to rescue Africans basically from enslavement. And there's so much more context to bring into that. So
that is true. That is true.
Like, say for instance, I'm Haitian, or I'm Haitian American, or I'm Haitian. Both my parents are from Haiti. But the thing is, in the history of Haiti, which I didn't learn about until I was in high school, it's a very powerful one because Toussaint Louverture and Dati Boukman, Sassi Fatiman, and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, all of them is men and women, revolutionaries who stood against one of the greatest powers of European imperialism, which was France. They stood against Napoleon and made a sovereign black nation that specifically stood for anti-slavery. It stood for abolition. The Haitian flag was made by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, tearing the white out of the French flag and then sewing together the red and blue. Red representing the mixed race people and the blue representing the African, the black people. So I'm saying when it comes to the rhetoric that we espouse, I'm not trying to be pedantic and say that everybody needs to hit every single historical point every time they bring up anything. Which is, I agree with what Crystalline is saying, that complicity doesn't necessarily mean full responsibility. But however, I will just say that we need to be careful with the sort of rhetoric and the sort of characterization that we form with our rhetoric, because if we're going to talk about the black men who are doing damage to the community, I think it's also fair to say that we should also bring the black men who are doing good for the community, because there's plenty of them who are standing up for the community and trying to do great things, and not only trying but are doing great things. So I only say that to my point earlier when I was making about what Alicia was saying, in that when we say things like, oh, they're degenerate or they're this or that. I just think we got to be careful because we can send the wrong message to everybody.
And I just want to say this: I did an ancestry test on myself. I am 41% Nigerian. That is not insignificant. I'm Edos though, and there were slave ports in Nigeria. I found out more about this because I wanted to find out the story of myself. And so, while Nigeria did not, was not like a participant, they sold out. Like, I am Nigerian. I'm 41% Nigerian. That's a lot. But here I am, and my family comes from slave owners in Texas. How did I get here? Who put me here? My people, for whatever reason, my people are responsible for me being here right now. So but that's complicity. That's not responsibility. That's seeing an opportunity and getting a come up. That's all that is.
Go ahead, sorry.
So that's not. And so what I'm saying is that when we have this idea that Black people, Black Africans are these perfect altruistic people, and then these evil men, these evil pale men came, and we had no idea what it was that was going on, and we didn't know, and all this other things like that. Like, I think that that's dishonest. And so it's just like, it doesn't take the brutality of the experience away to say that we hold some responsibility, that some people participated in that. It doesn't take away the brutality. It doesn't take away how it marginalized Black people, how it systematically from the moment we got here, even after the Civil War, when President Lincoln was assassinated, and we were all to have 40 acres and a mule, and that was quickly rescinded, and how that we didn't have basic civil rights until relatively recently in this country, to where my father was alive when you couldn't drink out of the same drinking fountain. So that doesn't take away from the brutality of it just by saying that there was some involvement in it. And that's the thing. It's like the avoidance of the responsibility. And that's why I brought the tie-in of what happens with hip hop music, because it's the same narrative. It's, oh, well, it's the white people who are in charge of it, but it's the complicity of the men who are creating the rhymes, that are creating the groups, that are creating the culture. Like, you can say that you're not running things, but you're complicit. That was the analogy, and that was the parallel that I was trying to bring to the conversation. That I just feel like just by looking on the looks of the men's faces, they're not hearing. And here's what I'm saying, ladies. They don't care. They don't care if they're not listening. You know what to do with that information. Like, seriously. They don't care. So
but I care. I care. And I think, going off of what you're saying about complicity and understanding the nuances in what you're saying, does that also extend to what we were talking about earlier with Black single mothers? Are they then complicit in their situation and have?
Yes. Yes, they are. Absolutely. Okay. Yes, they are. And here's the thing. I was a single mom. I was a baby mom. I was on weekend welfare. I'm doing very well now. But I was put in that position, and there's a variety of reasons why. Because again, like when we're talking about slavery, I noticed that there was this compulsion by the men to contextualize what I was saying, because there needs to be context in it. Otherwise, it sounds cruel. It sounds as if Black folks just don't care about other Black people. It just sounds like men that these African leaders didn't give a damn about these women and children. Contextualizing was important for me to have that conversation with you all. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to the women, contextualizing their experiences seems to go away. It seems as if that when the men are being held to account, contextualization needs to be important. But when women are doing things that are clearly destructive to them and to their offspring, there is no benefit, there is no contextualizing of her experience of why and how she got here. And that is the problem that I have with these conversations, is that there is no, you want all kinds of buffering, explanations, softness. You want me to be really careful about the rhetoric that I use. But when it comes to the women and why they make these decisions, there is no grace. There is no context given. She just grew up in a petri dish. She was created in a lab somewhere, and she just made all of these decisions without any context, without any impact on the people and society and the culture around her. And I call bull on that. If you think that didn't have an impact on how our culture has changed, I don't know if there's a conversation that we can have. Because if you're denying that didn't have, if you're denying that Black people didn't consume that and internalize that, then I don't know where to start with that. And I still
but you're repeating the same sentence 5 times. That doesn't make it altogether true.
Wait, before we go there, Atom Blue Rose, you've been on and you have not spoken. Please.
Okay, I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat room and on the panel. I just want to say that the things that Crystal and Karazin is saying about the rap history is absolutely correct, because I'm a Generation X too. So everything was poetic with the rap lyrics until the gangbanging era with NWA came in, just completely just obliterated the whole the rap era. So it started going into the gangbanging era. So it just really just demolished everything. And then after that, after the gangbanging era, then it was the bling bling era. And then after the bling bling era, then it was I guess it was trap music. And then after trap music, I believe it was the emo rappers. And then after that, then it's just absolutely I just call it crap music after that. The question I have for the Black men on the panel, where is y'all's accountability for everything that you guys have done for the quote unquote the Black community? I mean, where's you guys' accountability for the high domestic violence rate, the high murder rate against Black women and children, the crack era? Where's you guys' accountability for all of this?
Well,
okay, I'll answer. So because I'm as old as you guys, hip hop era, so I'll answer. I think what's disingenuous sometimes is that we don't supply balance, and maybe because the younger dudes don't know, we bully these younger dudes with narratives that they can't compete against because they don't have the research. But let me answer in a fair way. First of all, let me agree with you here before I disagree with you. I will agree with you that when the Jewish guy took over NWA, when the Jewish guy took over the NWA.
Who wrote the rap lyrics?
I didn't interrupt you. I'm trying to answer.
Who wrote the rap lyrics?
All right, let's have Mr. Research finish his thought, and then Autumn, you can respond.
This is why what I mean by balance and having a fair thing. When you interject like that, the younger dudes don't know. I'm not going to derail and go to who did the rap blues. I'm going to make a point. I'm agreeing with you. So at first, the Arabian Prince NWA didn't have all those lyrics. It wasn't until the Jewish guy, Jerry Heller, came in and convinced them to go the other route. So yes, you are true, but you leave out for these younger dudes the fact that NWA wasn't popping that originally until Jerry Heller came around. But I will agree with you, that did happen. A couple of more things, and then I'll let you have a microphone. So when it comes to another thing these younger dudes don't know, and they're not able to say nothing to it, is that when we keep making this narrative and saying the same sentence over and over again, you're trying to push a narrative to the ladies out there. And I like how someone said, see, ladies, they don't have nothing to say. See, a lot of times these younger dudes don't realize when they're being weaponized. So with that, here's where the disagreement comes into play. You got Queen Dido, who worked with whites in Africa against blacks. You had the Queen of Kano, who worked with Arabs against black people. Yet on this panel, nobody was able to push back on this narrative of only black men did it. We got to understand slavery goes from the Russians and the Ukrainians, all type of stuff. You can't, when you're just pushing this one anti-male narrative, it comes across like you're trying to weaponize an anti-male speech.
This is not, wait, Mr. Research. I would like the source.
Okay, I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
No. I'm not. It's a question. Can you?
I'm ready to answer this question. I'm ready to answer it.
Yeah. Can you provide me the source for the queens that were involved? Because I've been looking.
I just named Queen Dido.
No. I said, can you give me a source for it?
Oh man, you can look up any historical government source. Look up Morocco. The Morocco Museum will tell you about Queen Dido and how she started the Punic Wars over her love for a dude from Troy, a white guy. She was the first swirler. No, let me be clear. Queen Dido was the first swirler on record. So she started the Punic Wars.
No, actually, Moses was the first swirler, but okay.
What are you talking about? Moses' wife was a supporter, a dark-skinned woman. What are you talking about?
No, we're not going to do that.
You forget about the Moors too.
If you're going to describe who's the first swirler, you're going to have to define what. Like,
yeah, I mean, so it's like, so the fact that like literally black men marry interracially at twice and at 3 times the rate, like you don't really want to go down that route.
Okay, there is no 3 times the rate. The Department of Justice is the superior knowledge here in America, not your Pew Research, not some blog that you invented. The Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice doesn't have it at no 3%. It is 2.5. I'll give you that.
That is not what. First of all, it's not.
What's your source? You saying it's not?
So, Mr. Research, my source is the census. That's who my source is.
Who gets their information from the Department of Justice, ma'am?
No,
you're talking about a second government source as opposed to the superior Department of Justice.
The census comes from actual data where people actually mail in their responses, or the people get their responses from door to door. The Department of Justice is not going door to door. It's the census, sir, that goes door to door and gets this data. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna need to disabuse you of how we get these numbers. And
what I'm finish so I can give you what's really going down.
So what I can say to you is this. What I can say to you is this: is that okay? First of all, only 44% of Black men marry. And of that 44%, 24% of that 44% marries interracially. If that person, but who here are you going to let me finish?
Answer to sentence.
So here's the data, and here's the thing: it's been peer reviewed. If you like, and if you can laugh if you want to, but a Black man wrote a book called "Is Marriage for White People?"
Mr. Banks, who's afraid to have interviews. I know.
No, he's not afraid to have interviews. He's been on my.
Mr. Banks is afraid to come around any Black man about that book.
Can I finish? So here's the thing. We are both authors, and let me just tell you something. If you've ever been an author from a major publishing house, there's a legal team that has to fact check all of your data because you can get sued if you give out the wrong information. And so I wrote a book that was published through Simon & Schuster, and he wrote a book. And so what happens in the process of writing is that you have a legal team that has to go through and rake through all of the data to cross-check to make sure that it's accurate. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to.
Okay, can I speak now since you're not going to argue?
I'm not done. You're making
a long-winded narrative.
Okay, well, that's too bad. I am Themis's guest. I'm not on your channel. I'm on his channel. And when he tells me to be quiet, I will. Is that okay for you?
Go ahead. You interrupted me, so go ahead. It's your narrative. Go ahead.
I'm in Themis's house, and when he tells me to be quiet, I will. But I'm not gonna. You're not coming in his house and regulating how long I speak. If he's okay with me speaking, I'm gonna speak. So here is the deal. The deal is this: that as of the last census data, 24% and probably more at this point of Black men married interracially. One other group ethnicity was the highest in interracial marriage, and that was Asian women. So Asian women and Black men are the highest rates of interracial marriage. And when Black men make over six figures, here is the dichotomy. So when Black men reach $100,000 or more, and we're all having these conversations about quote unquote high value men, that 24% goes up to 30%. But here's also the flip side of this. When Black men reach that $100,000 mark, they are the least likely of every other race of men to marry. So out of this narrow group of Black men who actually marry, the 44%, you got to take away 24%. If they're educated, 30%. And if you want a quote unquote high value man who makes six figures, you're going to have to deal with the fact that he thinks because he has all of these choices, he marries less. So listen, you can argue with me all you want to. I'm going to be quiet in a second, but like everything that I say is backed up with facts. But if you contextualize,
Here it comes.
But how many white men are doing that?
Okay.
Comes that anti-Black.
I'm going to stop muting and kicking people off because we're not going to talk over each other. If it seems like I'm protecting Jaren, as someone said, I'm doing so specifically now, and I will protect anyone on here. But I'm doing because I think it's unfair for someone to come up and say Jaren is just someone who's gonna side with me or Crystalline. Like if you've been here at all, you know Jaren don't side with me on anything. So it is.
But see, here's a question. That's why we. I'm not going to belabor it. I just think it's unique that the gentleman pointed specifically to me. And made that thought process just to me, because I wanted to ask him, which I was trying to ask him, what is his definition of it? Because it appears that his whole thing is just don't say anything, let it ride. And look, we're trying to have we are trying to have a discussion, and we can't have a discussion if the narrative is going to be anything Miss Harrison says go. Let her narrative reign supreme.
Well, this research, as I said to you in the chat earlier.
If I'm showing the statistics, I'm not just talking out of my behind, sir. Like everything that I say,
they don't know that, Crystalline. I know you, Crystalline. They don't know that. They're new.
Okay.
You got a narrative,
Here's the thing. Do you know what you don't know me? Do you know what I have for breakfast? You don't know
me. I know that every time you make a comment about the Black community, it ends in Black males are negative. Period.
That is not fair.
Okay,
that's an unfair argument.
So here's the thing. While I'm sitting on a panel hosted by a Black male, you're saying that. So
yes,
that just goes to show that you don't
I know who you are since
about.
2008.
So
I know who you are.
I don't care if you've known me since 1973 when I was born.
If a white guy does something, you protect that image all day long.
That is not fair.
Don't say nothing because you didn't answer my question.
That is below the belt.
So we're gonna stop now. I'm done. This is the last warning. But if we're interrupting people again, it's just not gonna.
No, I'm just going to go ahead and go because I see that the whole point is to make Harrison's message supreme. So thank you, gentlemen, and I'll go ahead and go. God bless you guys with the anti-Black.
Okay, bye. Her message is going to stay supreme if it is reigning supreme. If you refuse to provide any evidence at all for what you're saying, how dare you, sir? Get on here. Tell us, oh, Crystalline is wrong. Okay, fine, she's wrong. Oh, the Department of Justice has research. That's great to know. Thank you. Can you let me know where? Oh, these queens help in selling this or that. Sure, I can believe that. Can you show me where it is? No. Then Crystalline says, okay, he's not showing you anything. Here you go. Here's some research from Pew. I show it. He goes, oh, that is from 2013, but you won't scroll down. I'm like, I literally read this before I put it on the screen. How are you going to, okay, it's from 2013. I put it up there. It is citing things from 2017. Wait, first and foremost, how do you know it's from 2013 when you didn't even read it, right? But it wasn't. So you are disingenuous. You come on here, you act like you're holier than thou. I let it slide the first time because I said maybe you were just rubbing people the wrong way and I didn't pick up on it. But you are here pretending like you know it all and we are saying, okay, fine, we will believe you if you provide any evidence. You did not. That is not okay. And you don't get to come up here and sit and take over the conversation. So yes, you got kicked out. I am sorry.